Well, should we do the demos first then?
Yeah, let's jump into the demos.
Yeah.
Do you want to do yours first? Or?
Yeah, well, I'm all set up here. So, Patty, you've seen this gizmo before, but it's one of my favorite toys. So it's called the DJI Osmo, and what it is, I'm not sure. Hands, raise your hands. Who knows what a gimbal is? Anybody? Okay, all right, very cool. Seems like a lot of you. So, really quick, it's a 3-axis motorized device that stabilizes the camera on top. So, when you're looking at it, normally if you hold the camera, you'll notice the jitter all over the place. But with this thing, it actively keeps the camera at a stable level. And what it's really good for, you can hear the whirring, it's not good for sound, hint. All right. It is great for video, though. It shoots in 4K. And I actually just got back from Washington, D.C. with our police department for National Police Week. And this was my A camera, strangely enough, the whole time. Because it's portable, it's lightweight, you can move around in crowds very easily. And as Ben will probably show too, with the GoPro Karma, you can do dolly-style shots that are normally, you used to have to set up a track, a camera, a tripod, and push the dang thing. Now it's as easy as kind of locking and moving very slowly, or running if you want. The way it operates is there's a trigger down here, so you can tap it to kind of get it set up. So let me load it up here. I know that this is a little tricky, but the way it works is you can use an iPhone, and I'm going to stand up here so you guys can all see the way what I'm doing. So under settings, I've activated the Osmo. You can hear it whirring. You go under settings and connect via Wi-Fi. So it keeps a connection, and it's pretty strong. I mean, I was in DC where there's signals all over the place, and I didn't lose it the whole time. So what you're doing is you're using this as a viewfinder while you move around, because otherwise you couldn't see. And one of the cool tricks about this device, at least, is as nice as a holder, you can actually go like this and walk this way. So if you're standing, for instance, if you'd stand up here, yep. So exactamundo. So the cool thing is, if you're going down a hallway or even running, like I was running with our motorcycle officers zooming behind me and going like this, so I didn't run into a sign or anything. But the shots turn out really well. It's really stable. But in post-production, you'll definitely want to get a different audio device to record. This thing runs about $570, and iPhone excluded, but you can pick up an iPhone 2 or anything that can get a Wi-Fi device, or if you have an old iPhone laying around or Android phone, you can download an app to it. And
it'll work with Android.
Yeah, yep. So the other thing too you may have noticed is, you can mount microphones on here as well. So if you want to stick a lavalier mic on here, I'm assuming all of you know what that is. It's what I'm wearing right here. You can stick the receiver on here and throw a transmitter on your subject and just hit record and walk away and you're good to go, right? So you'll need some sort of audio recording device. Let me move this out of the way real quick. So does anybody want to?
Oh, they just going down there.
You can take a look at what we're seeing. So this part right here is a joystick. I'm not recording it. I could record it if you want.
We can use it.
So this part right here is the joystick, and you can move the gimbal head. Yep, so that's right there. It's a wide-angle lens, obviously, so you capture pretty much everything. And you can tap on the screen to change exposure and where its focus point is. Additionally, this button right here is the record, and then you can also take pictures, which is pretty handy as well. So it's got 3 different modes. Tapping once on here is pretty much just holding position. So if it's angled here, this is how you get that nice dolly effect, right? Tapping twice recenters the Osmo, so it's looking straight ahead, and it's, oops, I did selfie mode, sorry. That was what I was going to say next. It's 3 taps. I tapped 1 too many.
Got a mind of its own?
Yeah. So yeah, 3 taps, it'll go into selfie mode, and it's great if you're that person who just wants to do your own thing and record yourself and not walk into anybody too. So yeah, the batteries are the downfall of this device. The normal ones last about a half hour. The high capacity ones last about 50 minutes. So, if you're not shooting for hours and hours and hours, this thing's perfect. And especially, it's a B-roll monster. I mean, really, if you need B-roll, this is seriously a really cheap device for it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What kind of batteries and where are they?
Yep. So they're proprietary. Let me turn this off.
So they're not rechargeable?
They are rechargeable.
Oh.
Yep. So
But they only last so long.
They only last so long. Yeah, the good thing is when you buy one of these right now, you get 2 of the regular ones, but we've found that the high capacity ones just outdo anything, I mean, I went through 2 of them while I was in DC and never touched the original 2 that came with the Osmo. But yeah, so the way it works is, it goes right in the handle, slides in, lock, oops, well, if I could actually do this correctly. There you go. Locks in, just like that. It's pretty simple. Switch on. It'll take a second to connect with your iPhone or phone.
Is that Bluetooth connecting?
Wi-Fi.
Oh,
Wi-Fi. Yep.
Okay.
So that also ensures that hopefully no one's jumping in on your signal and trying to mess with your shots or anything like that. It does record to a small micro SD card on the bottom, like this, right in the bottom here. And what I found out is that it also records to the phone.
Yeah.
So
That's nice.
exactly.
Nice.
So if you need a reference file, you can always go back to your phone and say, oh man, when was that shot? Oh, I remember, okay. And you can use that to kind of help you. Let's see, is there any other questions about this particular device?
The TJI?
DJI, yeah. So if that name sounds familiar, they're a drone company by trade. They make Phantoms and more recently the Mavic. I don't know if you guys have seen that thing. It folds up, super cool, super expensive, and let's be honest, you can't really fly it anywhere in the Twin Cities without calling 3 or 4 airports legally. But, whatever. I won't say anything more on that. I'm in trouble here.
Their newest one, the Spark, if anyone's looked up the Spark, that thing's pretty cool. They're naming it the selfie drone, or nicknaming it the selfie drone, because you can actually control it just with movements of your hand. But that's only if it's pointing at you. So you can get it to move away from you and do this nice wide selfie shot, or you can get it to come up and up close and do like group shots of people. But you can control it, make it go up and down, left and right, just with moving your hand, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah,
There's nothing out there like that right now. So.
And that's exactly right. So you just asked if the mounts come with it. Yep. They do. I can't even remember how we purchased some parts, but I know the phone part comes with it.
Sure.
Yeah. This extension bar does not, and I believe this is separate as well. So.
Is that a designated phone just for that?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, one of our people actually gave us their old iPhone. Was like, here you go.
Nice.
Otherwise, it becomes my kid's toy. So yeah, I think
How many minutes does the car go?
it depends. If I shot for an entire day and I didn't run out of room.
Depends on the
So
card
it
size
depends on
and
the card size
what
too. Yeah.
what format you're recording in, probably.
Exactly. So they actually make different variants of this to shoot in RAW, if you're familiar with that, or Pro, they call it. But it shoots in MP4 files, so they don't take up too much space. But yeah, so that's about it. I don't think there's anything else I to say on it. Ben,
Cool.
you wanna
Sure.
lead the way on that?
Yeah.
Yes.
So one question is, what competition is there for that?
Yeah.
And the second one would be, does anyone make a non, doing the reduction digitally?
Oh.
That you like? I haven't kept up with that. It used to be terrible, so.
And I'm sorry, the reduction digitally? What?
The stabilization.
Oh, yeah, okay, so, well, Ben,
Go ahead.
yeah, is that all right?
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the other gimbals that's out there is called the Zhiyun Crane. If you guys have mirrorless or DSLR cameras, it's like the #1 gimbal. And the benefit of it holds up to about 3.3 pounds, but the benefit of it, of course, is that you can use your DSLR cameras, which have larger sensor sizes, and you can use those super expensive lenses that people tend to buy. So yeah, that's another alternative.
Are you referring to like in
but-
post-production, like
Oh, if
digitally
that's what you meant,
stabilizing?
I'm
or-
sorry.
No, you answered the first one. The second one was during filming.
Yes.
Does anyone make a reasonable, digital motion reduction? Stabilization?
Oh, during
That was
filming.
built into cameras and it was terrible for years. I just.
Oh.
You're talking about like OIS? I'm sorry, is
Yeah.
that what you meant?
Just like image stabilization,
Well,
like
that
built
has a
into
gimbal
the.
to keep the
Mhm.
motion down, but some cameras kind of ignore the corners and
Right.
keep track of the center.
Yeah,
Oh,
there are
okay.
a lot of the mirrorless and DSLR cameras have image stabilization built into it, or the lenses do, or both.
Yeah.
I'm sure they're probably a lot better than they used to be, but I mean they're still not great. My camera has it, my SLR that I own, and some of my lenses do, and even still going handheld, there is shake to it. It's not going to be as smooth as this, but it's smoother than some. Yeah.
Yeah. And they make much larger ones too. If you're like and I'm sure as a filmmaker, you've heard of Ronin or Movies, right? Those things are gigantic.
Yeah,
They're
take
making
two
small
hands.
ones. Yeah,
Yeah.
2 hands, and they kind of look like you can do this with them, but the camera will stay in the center. The benefit of those is that the stability is solid, right? But the trade-off is your arms will get tired for any longer than I'd say an hour, unless you've got like super
rig.
yeah,
Or a rig, yeah.
or you're super
Yeah.
buff.
A lot of filmmakers will connect it to like a backpack thing that straps around, and there's a little crane that comes overhead, and then it just there's a zip line that comes down to the gimbal, and then that way that gives them a little bit of relief on their arms and their shoulders and stuff. So
Exactly. Well, that's the Osmo. I'll pass it around here. If you guys want to just take a look and pass
you guys can
it.
come on in. There's some scattered seats. Otherwise, we've got some on the side. You can pull up if you want.
Yeah. Do you need some chairs? You can grab.
I'm okay.
You sure?
Okay. Right.
Okay.
All right, we'll be going a little more than an hour left. So, another competition to the DJI Osmo is GoPro just came out. If you're familiar with GoPro, they make the small action cameras, and they just came out with their Karma Grip. They also make drones as well too. Everybody makes drones nowadays, but they make a drone called the Karma. And they just came out with the Karma Grip, which you can see looks very similar. It functions very similarly. There's some differences. I think they probably both have their positives and their negatives about them. But this is available. We just got this in February, I think, and it's available to check out if you are certified in the camera class at BCAT here. So I'll just kind of show you how this gets set up. I'll try to go through this quickly because I want to have about an hour to do the interviewing stuff. But so we have the GoPro Hero 4. They just came out with the Hero 5 a little while back, so this is the kind of second to newest GoPro. But so this is the housing that comes with the GoPro. It can come out of the housing, obviously, and you have to take it out of the housing to fit with the Karma Grip. But you just open it up. You got to take off the little, on the side here, there's a spot where you can put in the SD card, the micro SD card, and then plug in a USB cable to connect it to a computer. And then it's also where the charger is. But this just slides in like that, and you can see there's little connectors that slide into the power and the USB slot. You just want to make sure it goes all the way in like that, and then that'll lock closed. So kind of a positive thing compared to the Osmo is that it is a separate camera that you can take out and do other things with. From what I've heard, the Osmo has better quality picture. I haven't tested them side by side, but maybe we'll have to do that sometime. But all you do is you just want to hold it straight up. On the back side here, there's the power and some other buttons that I'll show you how they work in a little bit. But you just push the power button, and it'll right itself. And the thing that's kind of cool about this gimbal is it also powers the GoPro at the same time, and you can also tell the GoPro to start recording. So that's similar thing to the Osmo. They've made handheld gimbals for GoPros for a while now. A lot of them are kind of like cheap, knockoff ones, but none of them were able to power the GoPros like this is, so that's what's kind of nice. You would have to separately turn the GoPro on, look at the settings you want, and then hit record and everything. And this, when you're ready to start recording, there's just the red record button on the back, and you simply just hit that, and then you should see the light start to blink on the GoPro, which is really cool. A couple nice functions about this is there's also a tilt lock button here. So if you want to keep it at the same frame here, you can hold the tilt lock, and then you can see that it'll tilt down and up. So if you're doing like a downward shot over somebody, you can do that. And then also it automatically will right itself if you turn it upside down. It should, there it goes. So then you can do some low angle shots like this if you're like following somebody's foot or anything like that. And then if I turn it back upright, it should right itself automatically. So it seems pretty smart. That's another thing about this gimbal that I really like, is it's very intuitive. A lot of the kind of other non-name brand handheld gimbals, you have to like keep pushing like the settings button to get it to turn upside down or turn whichever way you want. And this one just kind of does it on its own, which is really nice. One of the kind of bigger downsides to this one is it doesn't have a screen. It comes with like a little ring that you can attach on here, and then it's just like the kind of standard GoPro mount that they use that looks like this here. And I'm assuming that's meant to be used to be able to attach your phone somehow, but I've yet to come across an actual like phone mount that they make specifically for this. I'm going to attempt to try to rig something up because I have a selfie stick that has a little phone holder that just uses the standard 3/8 inch thread that is on every tripod. And I'm going to try to somehow mount it to this and see if I can get it to work. But just like the Osmo, it connects to a phone via Wi-Fi. And then GoPro has their own app that you can get. It's free. And then you just have to connect to the GoPro, and you can, just like the Osmo, you can change the settings of the GoPro right within the app. You can record in the app. It does record a file. Well, you can see the file that you record. You can play it back, but I think it's just recorded into the GoPro. I don't think it records onto the phone. But while the GoPro is on and the Wi-Fi is on, you can download it to your phone. So then you'll have it there as well. Let's see what else.
Do you still have a deal with is it Periscope or Twitter where you can do live?
Well, with like GoPros or?
Yeah, GoPros you used to be able to do live to.
That's right.
It was Periscope through Twitter, yeah.
You can, well, so I'm not sure about GoPro, Ben, but I know with the Osmo, you can do Facebook Live. So we've used it for that before, but again, the audio is pretty atrocious unless you take a mic and stick it in there and then have to reroute it. But
okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure if.
I don't know if you can or not with the GoPro app. There might be. I'll have to look into that. That's a good question. Speaking of audio, one thing that's kind of a good thing and a bad thing about this is when you've got the GoPro in the housing, the audio is horrible, but since we have it out and in the gimbal here, there is a tiny little microphone built into these. It's still not like great audio, but it sounds a lot better than when you have it in the housing. So you can just use this as, like Dietrich said, these are great B-roll cameras. I've got a producer that has used this a few times now, and she goes to her shoes and does her interviews, and then she says she just packs away all of that big equipment and breaks this out for the rest of the time and just runs it around and does B-roll exclusively with this, and she loves it because it's really easy to set up. It's lightweight. She doesn't have to carry around a whole bunch of other gear with it. And then she does still get some audio on it as well. The battery on this is actually just built in. It doesn't come out. It is rechargeable. It says that it lasts about an hour and a half. I haven't tested it yet to see exactly how far it lasts. The thing that's kind of...
Half a day.
What's that?
It lasts half a day.
Half a day? Okay. The thing that's kind of nice about it too, connecting to the GoPro, is it also charges the GoPro from the Karma Grip. So if your battery was kind of low on the GoPro before you started, then you shouldn't have to worry about that dying. But that does also cause the battery to drain faster as well. I'm curious what's going to happen when these batteries start like malfunctioning, and how they're going to replace the battery, but. I don't know, we'll see what happens. These just came out at the beginning of this year, so they're pretty new as far as the handheld gimbals go.
Well, and the other part too about the GoPro Karma, or the GoPro Grip there, is that if you guys have heard of GoPro Karma, it's their drone. where you can actually slide this
Yeah.
piece into the drone and it becomes a drone. So that's one of the things that GoPro is really touting about
Yeah,
this
so
system.
that just comes out and then that slides into the gimbal or the docking on the drone.
Drone, yeah.
Mhm.
Another thing with these kind of devices too is, and just 4K in general, I'm sure all of you know this, but 4K is 4 times 1080, right? So the great thing about shooting wide is that you can zoom in and post and kind of frame your shots how you want it to look in post-production rather than needing to get it right the first time. So you purposely shoot a little bit wider and then zoom in, right? So that's one cool thing I personally like about the Osmo and at least shooting in 4K. But that's just that's that. So.
And the GoPro Hero 4 does have a 4K option. I believe it's only at 30 frames per second. I think that's the only option you've got for 4K. But then, you can do 1080 at, I know for sure 60 frames per second and possibly even 120. I'm not certain about that.
Oh, thanks.
I forgot what else I was going to say about the GoPro. I don't know. Any other questions about that?
Price on it.
Oh, sure. It is a little bit more expensive because you do have to buy the GoPro separately. So just the grip itself, I think, is $300, and it works with either the Hero 4 or the Hero 5. The housing for it, I found this out after I ordered it. When I ordered it, it said it was just the Karma grip, $300. I ordered it, and it turns out that this housing here was built for the Hero 5. And so I could have ordered another one for, I think it was like an extra like $20 or something, and gotten the Hero 4 mount. But I ended up having to order this separately, which, is fine. But total, because then the Hero 4, I think, was around $350, something like that. So you're looking at total close to $700, I think. So.
Yeah, I'm just assuming, but I think these were really meant for folks who already had GoPros, right, and wanted to use them as a gimbal, right? Whereas this was sort of the opposite. This is kind of an original product. DJI had thought, well, they'd been developing drones for years, but one of the things was they thought, well, why not create something you can put in someone's hand, get that same stable footage? So the downside of this is, be very honest, it's not great in low light conditions. And some of the video can kind of turn out grainy just a little bit if you're shooting, again, in those low light conditions. The other part too is when you're moving, I would almost never use the joystick unless you're very skilled with your thumb, because what'll end up happening is it'll jerk a little bit. And so I don't know if this is the same, Ben, with the GoPro grip, but moving the body, the camera will naturally pan or go up and down instead of, and this is just a technique that I've learned by using this a lot now. But still, it's wonderful for, those kind of B-roll shots where you're following someone, or you have a subject that's going through a crowd, especially stuff like that.
So you can control that? You can tilt it up
tilt
and down
up and
manually?
down. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, well, that's one thing that's definitely very different.
Yeah.
Is that there isn't a joystick,
Oh,
little
okay.
joystick option on the Karma grip. It's basically just a gimbal. But yeah.
Yeah. So
Sorry, those questions.
It's all right.
So, is the only reason you want to go 60 or 120 frames is just slow motion? Is that,
Pretty much.
and then
Yeah.
is everything today like, that's turned in 30 frames that everyone's shooting for regular?
Generally, yeah. Broadcast generally is 30 frames per second still.
That's what I'm used to, but there's
yeah.
24 was.
24 is more of like a film style, yeah. And a lot of filmmakers still use that today, just because it kind of does still give it that old film type of look. But yeah, the higher the frame rate, then the slower you can make the video. So they make cameras out there that cost thousands and thousands of dollars that can shoot about 30 seconds worth of video, but they shoot at like 12,000 frames per second, like ridiculous amount of frames per second. And when you watch like National Geographic and stuff, and they show those like shots of like hummingbirds, and you can see every little detail of their wings as they're flapping, like that's like one of those cameras. So, yeah.
I went to the DJI website. There's some really cool footage using your camera and some other gimbals.
yeah. The again, it depends if you want to get a again, this is an all-in-one sort of package, right? But then they also make the Ronin series, which is where you can mount DSLRs or video cameras onto it. So yeah, that's it. Yeah, should we move on?
Yeah, let's jump into the interviewing. And we are going to have...
The name of that again, so I can...
Yes, this one's called the DJI Osmo, and that one's a GoPro.
GoPro Karma
Karma
Grip.
Yep.
Yep.
So.
Yeah.
Yep.
We are going to have, hopefully, well, if we can get through our slides, we're hopefully going to have time for Q&A at the end as well. But, you know, if you have any burning questions along the way during this, feel free to just ask them. So.
Absolutely.
All right. And we have a handout as well.
Then let me
So,
start you if you want.
pass that along the back.
You got it. All right.
If you want to collect them on the other end, that'd be
Yeah,
great.
absolutely.
All right. I don't even know if we have enough, actually. It seems like more people
Then-
kept showing up, so
And we can, well,
hopefully we got enough.
we can print more.
Yeah,
probably.
if we run out, share with a neighbor, and I'll print some more afterwards. Yeah, you can just pass that down to
Yeah.
Sharon.
Yep. Are there any extras? Or, you have some extras I can take? Okay, yeah. that's
Okay,
great.
good. Very good.
Cool.
Okay. So here are some tips for interviewing on camera. We'll get started first with tips for the interviewer. So this is referring to, you know, if you are having a guest on, maybe you want to be on camera with them, maybe you don't, things like that, just kind of tips for the person who's doing the interviewing. So you want to decide ahead of time what you want your setup to be and what you want your shots to look like. So again, do you want to be on camera with them, or do you want to ask questions off camera? It kind of depends on the final look of the video. Same with, like, if you are asking questions off camera, do you want your subject to be looking at you while you're standing next to the camera, which means they're looking off camera, or do you want them looking directly into the camera? Whatever you have your subject do, it's going to tell a little bit different story. So generally, if your interviewee is addressing your audience directly, then you would have them look directly into the camera. And I'll show you some samples of all this stuff. So the last guy on the bottom right there, he's looking directly into the camera because he's talking directly to the audience. This is used a lot for, like, public service announcement videos, things like that, or you know, if somebody's maybe trying to, like, sell something, then you would have them look directly into the camera. If you are going to be on camera with them, have them look directly at you. It would look pretty weird if they're just staring into the camera and you're asking them questions while you're both on camera. And then if you are interviewing them off camera, so just like the guy in the top left there, you want to frame them a little bit to the opposite side of where they're looking to give them some nice look space there. So if he was framed on the other side of the camera, then he'd have all of this space to his back, and it would just look really awkward, and it would look like he's just, like, staring at, like, the edge of the screen. So you want to frame them on the opposite side of where they're looking. And then some other kind of examples, kind of news style interviews in the top right. You know, that's just your general kind of news sort of stand up. She's got a mic, she's going back and forth asking questions side by side with the subject. And then in the bottom left is more of like a sit down, you know, kind of more professional news style interview. You can kind of see, it's a little hard to tell, but there is a person sitting right there, in front of that camera. So you're getting kind of an over the shoulder shot of both the interviewer and the interviewee.
And these style of interviews right here are called man-on-the-street interviews. Those of you who know what that term is, where you go up to a random stranger and you have your videographer next to you and you just go like that. They tend to be really effective if you find someone who's very emotional, who has a very strong opinion about something. At least that's what I've kind of gathered from that. With these, we use this for retirement videos a lot as well, or like personal tributes. Ben mentioned PSAs, but say like, for instance, you had a parent or somebody that you really cared about and wanted to share your thoughts about them. Maybe they're sick in the hospital or something. You want to make a really good video on that. This really is good for emotion, showing emotion, because it's such a tight shot, right? And we talk with our faces, we talk with our eyes. With this style, like Ben said, this is a standard kind of news shot. One of the other tricks on here too is if you set up a camera, so this is, let's just, like this camera for instance, if I'm the subject, you can set up a profile shot as well, so you can cut between the two of them and mix that in when you're doing interviews, if that's something you feel like doing. It adds a little more variety than just having a person, looking the same direction the whole time. And again, going back to that 4K example, if you shoot in 4K, you can get a close up
Nice tight
versus
shot.
a medium. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, you'll notice a lot the news does that. They'll cut from this shot to like a very close-up shot where it's like cutting off the top of their head and like almost like their chin. That kind of seems to be the style nowadays in news. They get this really tight close-up. I personally am not a fan of that. I would zoom out a little bit, but you do want to have it tighter than this shot here, because otherwise it's going to look like a jump cut when you cut back and forth. And then we kind of set up a little bit of a typical setup here that you would see in public access. You wouldn't really see this in like news so much, but a lot of public access shows, like the informational talk shows and stuff, will have a setup like this where you've got your chairs kind of angled in a little bit towards each other, and then you have your interviewer talking to the guests like this, and they're having more of kind of a casual conversation this way. So we just wanted to kind of set this up to kind of give you an idea of what you could do if you wanted to do a show here, how you could set it up. So.
And the reason too is the focus of a viewer's vision. Obviously, your body is facing in, this person's facing in, so naturally it's almost like they're meeting visually, and so that's why they tend to do that style of arrangement.
Yep. Yeah. If you were to turn the chairs more this way, I mean, it's going to be really awkward because your cameras are all over there.
Right.
So it's going to be weird because you're just getting profile shots the whole time of the people. If you have them turned too much the other way, then it's awkward for the people doing the interviews.
Here, should we just
Yeah.
like
'Cause
this
then,
way?
Yeah.
So, hey,
then you're
hi,
like
Ben.
looking over your shoulder trying to talk
Right.
to the people, and that's
So-
just weird. That too.
Yeah, that poor flip.
Yeah, and I did have to throw some ferns in here. We wouldn't be a public access TV if we didn't have some fake plants. So we've got
Right.
we've got about 3 more back in our closet back there. Just so you guys know, we have plenty of fake plants here for you to use. All right.
Absolutely.
Okay, moving on. So the next tip, prepare your questions. You want to think ahead of time the type of questions that you want to ask, and that's it's really about the information that you want to get across to your viewers. So take the time to write questions down. 5 to 10 generally is enough. It depends on how long the interview is. If you're looking for like an hour-long interview, you're probably going to want quite a few more than that. 5 to 10 questions. You always edit it down. You ask more than you think you're going to need, and then you can edit out the answers that you didn't really like. So 5 to 10 questions is probably going to give you, I'd say, like a 3-minute long video in the end.
And on that note, so one of the other parts of it too is you can strategize the order of your questions. What I tend to do personally is, if I know it's an emotional interview, and it's like, let's say for instance, it's a mom who's lost a kid or something like this, I'll start off by asking very factual questions. What happened? Tell me, describe what happened. And then at the end, as you build up to it, you ask her, how does it make you feel? Or, you bring out the emotional questions. So the reason you do that, and it actually goes along with this, if you're by yourself, you start wide with all the factual stuff, because that's not the juicy stuff, right? You want to get closer when they either tear up or they have some sort of emotion that you're trying to pull from them. So that's a strategy that you can use with questioning and preparing your questions, just if you're wondering. So you may be wondering, like, how do news people do that? I guarantee you watch, actually even watch Megyn Kelly's interview with Vladimir Putin. Her questioning, it follows that kind of line. She goes from being kind of really nice and very professional to asking some harder questions a little bit toward the end. Again, it's to draw out that emotion. That's what you're seeking with that type of questioning. So, anyway,
Cool.
I digress.
You want to take the next one?
Oh yeah, okay. So speaking of this, prepare to be spontaneous. One of the skills that I've found helps a lot is active listening. How many of you know active listening, right? Okay, it's pretty obvious. Listen to what your subject's saying and follow up, right? So you don't have to stick to a script of, how did you feel? What did that make you seem like?
Yeah.
Relax, just talk.
Yeah. Not only is that awkward, but it's going to make your guest feel awkward and feel rigid as well if you're not comfortable, being able to kind of casually go back and forth with them. So.
Exactly. The next one is avoid asking yes or no questions for obvious reasons. If you ask a yes or no question, an interview subject can get away with just saying yes, no, right? Did that hurt? Yes. Instead of that, you could say, how did that make you feel when, you lost your child? Because then it forces them to come up with something. They can't just say yes. That doesn't make sense, right?
Yeah, yeah. If you're interviewing somebody on camera with them, and you're only asking yes or no questions, and they're only giving you yes or no answers, it's going to be a super short interview. Even though you're on camera with them, and the audience knows what you asked, and they understand their answer, it's just going to be very short. And then conversely from that, if you're interviewing them off camera, and you're maybe not including the questions in your final video, you're only including the answers, your audience is going to know what they're talking about if they're just going yes. So.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
And then, another point there too is that goes along with that is, have your subject kind of answer the question with the question in it. So if you say like, how did that make you feel? And they say, well, that made me feel such and such. Because then if you are interviewing them off camera, then they can start in with that and, people kind of understand what the question was. Does that make sense? Cool. All right, the next tip is to get the interviewee comfortable. All of the professionals do this. We don't see it a lot of the time because they're on like commercial break or whatever, but if you've ever worked in a TV station, they have their guests come on right at the beginning of a commercial break, and they sit and chat with them for a little bit and just get them, feeling comfortable before the interview actually gets started. Then that way, hopefully, by the time the interview does start, the dry mouth has kind of gone away a little bit, and the nerves have gone away a little bit, and they're ready to do the interview. All right. And then this next one, you could kind of, depending on what the interview is, or who your guest is, generally you don't want to give out your specific questions in advance to your guest, because then, even if you do it 5 minutes before the interview starts, you show them the list of questions that you have, they're immediately in their head starting to put a script together of what they're going to say, and it comes across a lot less natural. So you want them to be spontaneous in their answers and be natural in their answers. Again, it kind of depends on who you're interviewing, because if they are, a seasoned professional and they've done tons of interviews on TV, then they're probably not nervous at all, and they probably already kind of have a script in their head of what they're going to say. So in that case, if they specifically ask you for the questions, you could give it to them. But if it's somebody's like first time, it actually happens more often with people who it's their first time being interviewed on camera, they're really nervous and they want to know what the questions are, so they're going to ask you, hey, can I see your questions? I usually say no, sorry, and you can explain to them, it comes across more natural if we just, you just give me your answers in the interview. So,
yeah, a big thing is don't talk over your subject. A lot of you probably know this already, but one of the things people hate is silence. because we naturally try to fill it in, right? When you're in a conversation and you pause, you either draw people's attention or someone will say something, right? Because that feeling of silence is really awkward. But you can use that to your advantage. What I do is, in my head, I'll ask a question and let the person keep talking as long as they want, because in post-production you can chop any which way you want. But then I'll count in my head 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, and then I'll follow up with a question. That gives them time to keep going. And that's when really good sound bites come out, is when people think that they need to keep explaining. They'll get to this point where they've said it once, processed it, they'll say it again, process it, and then they'll come out and just say it in a very plain and simple way. So again, this is more strategic. When you're doing interviews, let them breathe a little bit. The last part right here, so asking for a final comment. When you're at the end of all your questions and you think, oh, I've exhausted everything, you can always ask a subject, is there anything that I didn't ask you about that you want to add? That's the best question, because a lot of times a subject will have something on the tip of their tongue, they've been wanting to say it, they just weren't prompted, and that's their opportunity to share that information. This also ties back to that whole spontaneous thing where you can follow up on that. Maybe it's an interesting part of who they are. I'll give you an example. We were interviewing a building inspector, and for an award he got, and it's just a very blah topic. But at the end, I asked him, is there anything else you want to add? And he said, well, I originally never wanted to do this. I actually wanted to be a police officer. And I thought, what? That's interesting. Tell me more. What do you mean? And he goes into this whole story about how his wife didn't want him to be a patrol officer, but he still wanted to do code enforcement. And so he decided to be a building inspector. Again, it's interesting, right? It makes people like, oh, that's a really cool open. I would never have thought that about you. And there you go. So being patient with the subject like that really works.
And kind of going along with that tip is to don't stop filming when the interview is over, because even your interviewer might not ask that question right away. They might wait until they think the cameras are stopped rolling and then start having more of a casual conversation with them. But as if you're the camera person in that situation, keep the cameras rolling, because then you do catch a lot of those good sound bites. And then also with your subject or your guest, they don't realize that it's still rolling, so if your camera person could just lock the camera down and kind of start like cleaning up a little bit and make it seem like they're not still rolling, then psychologically your guest thinks that you're done, and then they're going to open up a lot more. So.
You can even joke with them and say like, oh,
Yeah.
glad that was over, right?
Yeah.
And then they'll be like, oh yeah, I hate being on camera, oh, it's terrible.
Yeah.
But then they'll relax, and that's the goal.
Yeah.
Comfortable.
And the last tip is have energy and be authentic, curious, and open. The way that you act in the interview is going to bring out that same type of emotion and positive energy and stuff from your guest. So if you're authentic, if you're relaxed, if you're able to kind of have more of a casual conversation with them and open up more with them, then they're going to do the same. They're going to reciprocate with that. So your ultimate goal is to get your interviewee to perform their best. So don't come at them real hardcore with like a whole bunch of questions, unless you are like a hardcore news reporter.
Sorry. Maybe I should say don't go too crazy.
Yeah.
It depends on the subject.
Yeah, and kind of going back to like that don't talk over your subject, if you watch news regularly, you'll notice that reporters do that purposely because they're trying to make their subject kind of catch them off guard and make them a little bit nervous, and maybe stumble a little bit. So news reporters do that quite often. They purposely will jump in with a follow-up question like while their subject is still talking. So.
Perfect example, if any of you want to see something really entertaining, watch the White House press meetings right now with Sean Spicer and the way the reporters just pile on him, because it'll be rapid fire. Someone will follow up in the room. And that's, again, like Ben said, they're trying to get something out of him, right? But if you're with like a sweet, 10-year-old kid or something, you don't want to bombard them with all these questions and,
They don't
make
get
them feel
very
nervous.
far because he has a pat answer of, I haven't discussed that with.
Oh, sure. The politician.
So he's ready for you. Just ask anything. I have not discussed that subject with so-and-so.
That's
And
good,
that settles it.
right?
You should go to something else.
All right. Before we jump into tips for the interviewee, I forgot about a clip that goes along with point number 1, the decide ahead of time what you want your setup to be and how you want it to look. So this is a producer spotlight that I put together last month with a couple of producers of one of the shows we have here. So I'll just kind of play a little bit of it to show you what I did. So I had a 2-camera setup here, and I told them to look into the center camera, the 2-shot camera, because I wanted them to be able to address the audience. But then I had a side camera there where I was getting a closer up shot, not quite that tight profile shot like you see in the news, but just to have a cutaway shot to go back and forth with.
Yeah, hi guys, my name is Marco Solorzano. I'm the tech director for CATV.
So that's just kind of another example of how you can kind of set up a shot for an interview. And obviously I was off camera. I was actually standing next to the second camera, and they kept getting confused. They kept wanting to talk to me, and so they were looking into the second camera a lot, and I had to keep going like this, like pointing over at the center cam, the 2-shot, like, look over there. So yeah. All right.
You guys have any tricks? I find if you're not professional, don't ask them to look into the camera, because that's, takes some training, but do you have any tips as to how to get someone's not professional to do a good job looking into the camera?
Like, no, Ben, you go first.
I don't know. I mean, that's a really good question because everybody's different. These 2 guys here, Emilio on the left, was really nervous. Marco is more of just kind of a laid-back personality, so he didn't really care so much. But Emilio was the one that kept looking over at me, and I had to keep getting him to look back at the center camera.
Do you have lights on your cameras that shows which one's on?
With that interviewer, I didn't because I just had, I was just shooting with 2 field cameras. We do have tally lights on our studio lights there, so yeah. Which some people, the tally lights are another thing that a lot of people need training in. Some people are really good about when they see that light, they just turn automatically to it. I've also worked with people who, I was a floor director, and I had to, I was listening to the director, and when I knew they were about to take the camera, I had to, get them ready and then point them over to the camera to get them to turn towards it.
Well, if it's a non-professional, we used to cover up the tally lights.
Oh, yeah.
Because that would do nothing but confuse them.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I guess as far as addressing the camera, what I found at least helps people who are non-professional or just talking to the camera is I tell them to imagine they're talking to a friend or to their grandma or somebody that they feel really comfortable with.
You actually have that point coming up.
Oh, whoops, I'm sorry.
It's all right. No,
Never mind.
We'll get to it.
Don't.
We'll get to it.
But yeah, so.
That's actually your point.
Oh, that is
you'll
mine.
go, so
I stole it for myself.
we'll get to
Okay.
that.
Anyway, yeah. So I mean, again, it really is. If you bring a sense of warmth as a person and help them relax, then that's kind of all you can do. The rest is really up to them. And looking at a camera is kind of weird to begin with because it's not like looking at someone's face. So you just it takes practice, really. That's what it comes down to, though. At least I think so.
All right. Do you want to start off the next one?
Yeah. So this one is, are we on tips for interviewees then?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So the first one on there is wear clothes that make you feel good about yourself. I've always found, like, this gentleman right here, he's kind of more relaxed fit. I always found, for myself at least, that wearing a suit, and I would wear suits on like 90-degree days and stuff, but I always wore one because it made me feel more professional, and I would get talking with somebody, and they treated me a lot differently when I was in a suit versus when I was wearing like a coat or some kind of jacket. It depends on what kind of presence you want to bring to the interview too. So I think though, for our case, if you're hosting and we're sitting across from each other, wear something that reflects the type of show you're trying to present, right? If the subject is something more fun, dress fun. If it's more serious, then wear something formal, right? So, yeah. So that being said, you want to talk about the neon clothing?
Oh yeah, no, I'll show a couple more examples.
Oh,
so,
okay, sure.
So this isn't this isn't an interviewee. If you're familiar with this guy, this is Charlie Rose with CBS. I just wanted to point out, I think it's hilarious that he wears tennis shoes when he's on set. He's got his suit and his tie, and then he wears tennis shoes every day. And they're always like, it's kind of hard to tell in there, but there's a bright blue bottom to the shoes, and he often wears like bright red ones. And that's what he's comfortable in. That's what he likes to wear. But then when he does need to get serious, he knows how to get a little bit more professional. Still obviously has a suit, but interviewing Vladimir Putin, you can see he's got his nice dress slacks and socks and shoes on there. So, and there's, I almost put another picture in here. He one time wore some pants that Cam Newton wore, these really like crazy pattern flamboyant pants on the set. So I like Charlie Rose. I think he's funny. So, yeah. Do you actually, I think your tip is still the next one.
Oh, it is, okay.
Neon clothing.
A big thing to not wear our neon clothing. Neon, for whatever, it just like, it draws so much attention away from you and a subject that you're speaking with, or the person you're speaking with, that it's kind of, it'll throw you off. Another thing is, if you're doing green screen, make sure your shirt isn't the same color as the green screen,
or even close to the same color.
Because you'll inadvertently put a map or something on your own body, and you'll be like, wait, what happened? I'm a floating head. So yeah, that's kind of a bummer too. But do you want to talk about the patterns and? Yeah.
So another thing that you want to try to avoid is tight patterns in your clothes. This happens a lot with men because they tend to wear, I almost wore one today to kind of show you an example, but they tend to wear like button-up shirts that are like checkered patterns, like this tight checkered pattern. And what that does is it creates this thing called the moire effect, which is kind of sort of an optical illusion in the camera. And this guy can explain the moire effect a lot better than I can, so we're going to watch this video here.
Moire is one of those common video problems that we all will likely encounter sooner rather than later. Even if you're not familiar with the name already, chances are that you've seen this problem more than once in your own videos and probably on TV as well. Moire is that weird, trippy, multicolored vibrating pattern that's sometimes created whenever we're shooting repeated patterns with fine details or any other thin line pattern where the lines are very close together. Specifically, I'm talking about things like pinstripes, small checkers, or herringbone patterns. So what exactly causes moire? Well, moire is a form of aliasing which occurs when the camera incorrectly samples an image. Remember, many cameras these days, especially DSLRs, have huge imaging chips for capturing still photos. However, when these dual-purpose cameras are switched from still photo mode to video mode, they have to use some tricky math to downsample the image to standard HD resolutions. If we're talking about a camera like the Canon 6D, the camera is jumping through hoops to take a 5472 by 3648 image and create a 1920 by 1080 pixel image. You have a 20 megapixel image being sampled down to just over 2 megapixels. So essentially, it's like making a photocopy that's 10% the size of the original image. That tiny photocopy isn't just 90% smaller than the original, it also contains 90% less detail information than the original image. This 90% downsampling is where the funky image issues of aliasing can occur. By its very definition, sampling means that the camera is not really capturing all of the detail. It's only capturing some of the detail at regular intervals and then using a compression algorithm or some other magic video math to fill in the blanks. So aliasing occurs whenever the camera fills in those blanks with the wrong visual information. When this happens, we can get jagged lines where there should be straight lines, vertical lines where there should be diagonal lines, or just strange vibrating colored patterns anywhere there's too much detail for the camera to handle. So anytime there's more fine detail than the camera can handle when sampling, we're likely to get some level of aliasing and moire. And to be clear, although this is a problem that's more prevalent in DSLRs, moire and aliasing has been around in the video world for a long time. And even when it comes to DSLR cameras, every camera model handles the moire problem a little differently. Some models better than others, even amongst the same manufacturers. Now, if moire is a big concern for you, I recommend that you comb through camera reviews and user forums before buying any new camera model to see how that particular camera handles moire.
All right.
Very good.
Question.
Yeah.
Do you see this more when you're down converting stuff? Does it have a tendency to show up? I mean, you may not see it on HD, but when the minute you down convert it, does that sometimes?
I think it more has to do with like what he was saying, like the processors and stuff like in the camera. If you buy a specific camera that can, handle moire better, then even if you down convert the footage afterwards, you shouldn't see moire. It's when it's initially recorded is when you're going to see that. So. Yes.
And there's a challenge with informing the guests of what
Yeah,
they're.
yeah.
Often they'll say yeah, and they forget about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then this happens to our political candidates we've had on. We go over this situation,
Mm-hmm.
and they show up with exactly what you told.
Yeah. One thing you can do to help with that is to ask them to bring a second shirt that's different, a different style, to change into if they need to.
I had our host one time exchange jackets, and my host was just a plain shirt. So.
Oh, yeah. Nice. Yeah. Were you going to say something?
Oh, no. Those are all good points.
Okay. All right. Okay. So the next point, any other questions about that at all? Okay. Where's my mouse? Here we go. So the next point is talking about makeup. So you want to wear makeup, but not too much. Generally, men, when they're coming on to be interviewed on camera, they don't even think about that, obviously. They're not going to show up with any makeup on their face. If you want to have some makeup with you, to some face powder, it's always a good thing to have. Most TV studios are probably already going to have that. There's kind of an example, especially, the reporter on the left, you can see that she's wearing makeup clearly, but she's not like overdoing it. She looks very nice. The gentleman on the right, he's getting some powder applied to his cheek, but you can see that his head, especially this happens a lot with men who are bald, under these lights, they tend to get that sheen on there, especially if they're nervous and they're sweating. It's going to be even worse. So just a little bit of powder up there helps a lot with that. And then, as for the ladies, again, just, don't wear too much makeup. The camera does emphasize everything, so if you have too much makeup on, you can end up looking like a clown. And that's Mimi from the Drew Carey Show. Obviously, she's purposely like that. But and then the lady on the right, I guess, apparently was actually makeup malfunction. I'm not entirely sure how the makeup malfunction, but she must have had a lot of lipstick on and was nervous touching her face, I guess. I'm not sure, but she apparently smeared it all over herself. So.
And adding to that, one of the things you can do is buy a very general makeup kit, like at Walmart or something that's relatively cheap. You don't have to go to MAC and like buy $100 things of makeup, right? So, and what it does is, if all of us have some sort of blemish usually on your face, and so even a little bit helps, because like Ben mentioned, even if you under lights, you're eventually going to start sweating and glistening. And so what makeup can do is prevent that from happening and keeping it trapped in. Yes, you might get zits, but just wash your face after, right? So anyway, that's just a tip.
Yeah,
Jeff.
What concerns do we have to have when we go totally high def?
Oh, that's a good question.
It is a good question because if you are, I mean, we're not going to be like completely like full HD probably anytime soon, but a lot of the stations where, you know, they have a full HD cameras, full HD switcher, everything, you know, is very, very high detail. You can really see like all of the detail on people's faces, especially on a close-up. So, you know, I mean, I guess it is a concern, but a lot of news stations nowadays are full HD, and they, you know, they still obviously use makeup. You got to also kind of be a little bit careful of the type of makeup you use, because some of it clumps more than others, especially if you're gobbing it on. But you
A lot
know,
of them used to have professionals come in and train their news people on how to put on what amount. I remember when Kara got their HD here, it was hard to look at them when they did the tight shots, because you could see the pores on their face.
Yes, you can.
But isn't that more got to do with if you use no soft box or any soft lighting, you're gonna see
Yeah.
on HD, you'll see it.
You're gonna
And
see.
And if it's bad makeup, you'll see it even worse. I mean, one of the things that I saw with a short film that was shot is they shellacked, I like that word, the makeup under that guy. They should have just used powder.
Right.
But for some reason they used base.
Right.
The person that did it didn't know what she was doing. So that caused problems with HD. But if you use a soft light on it, you shouldn't have any problems with HD.
yeah, yeah.
When I used to shoot weddings, Hasselblad had these filters called Softar, which work miracles. And is there some electronic equivalent where you can just kind of, even though you're shooting in high def, kind of back off?
It's a good
You can do
question.
stuff in Adobe.
I was gonna say in
Yeah.
Adobe you
to
can soften.
stuff after the fact, but it's.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Gaussian blurs or
Yeah,
something like
right.
that, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
No,
and every camera is going to be a little different too. You know, if you're and even like the lenses you use, if your camera has detachable lenses, you know, those are going to make a difference as well. So, you know,
Right.
it kind of depends on the situation, what gear you've got. but-
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, really, as long as you're not going too extreme, unless that's what you're going for. You
Yeah.
know, if you want to do a show and be a clown and stuff, that's cool. No judgment. But, you know, if you just want to clean yourself up, you know, just what I used to do is I would wash my face, put lotion on, and then just dab a little bit of foundation on, if that helps. Kind of explain it. I wouldn't go crazy and just start. Some people like do 4 layers on their face. The other thing too, and this is more for filmmaking. Ben, I'm sure you can speak more to this than I can, but I'm just starting to learn a little bit more about this. Is the eyeshadow, just a little bit here and there. It helps people's eyes pop out. So like when we're talking about this woman right here, you can definitely see that she's put on liner around her eyes, and even with men, it's not all that weird when you see it actually on camera. It may seem funny at first because you're not used to it, but it helps your eyes pop out a little bit more and kind of gives you that effect.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So.
And if you feel weird wearing makeup, you know, just keep in mind that the professionals have been doing it forever. Even the men, you know, male anchors have been wearing makeup forever. So, you know, it's really not that weird, and makeup's not just for women. So.
Yeah, there you go.
All right. Any other questions? Cool. As we're sitting up here with no makeup on.
I know. Well. No, it's all good.
So the next tip is to get as much information as possible as the interviewee. So, you know, familiarize yourself with the person who's going to be interviewing you. You know, most people, I mean, if it's a professional, yeah, you know, even like an anchor or something, a lot of the anchors, they display like their email addresses right on their lower third. You know, email them and just, you know, kind of get to know them a little bit, do a Google search about them, you know, familiarize yourself with like their style. You know, if they seem like they're very like calm type of people, you know, maybe you also want to kind of be calm. If they seem like they have a little bit more of like an upbeat personality and can be more fun, then you know that you can be more fun as well. And you know, feel free to reach out and ask them how long the interview is going to be, how many questions they're going to ask you. You know, you can ask the specific questions. They may or may not give it to you, but you can kind of say, you know, like what types of questions are going to be asked, things like that. So.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's another thing. When you're interviewing experts, I've found that they can talk forever about their subject. That, you know, if you're interviewing someone and they know so much about it, they'll just keep going on and on and on. So beforehand, you can tell them that I need short, concise answers, and you know, try to think about that. I think one of the other errors, Ben, I don't know if we mentioned this before, but trying not to memorize answers. When you try to memorize things, it just comes out unnatural. I think you mentioned something a little bit about that. But that's where that information overload can occur. Folks also start to ramble if they know too much about something, and they'll just go on. And it's like, okay. The other thing, all right, so moving on. Sitting up straight. I've been doing a poor job of that right now because I've been going like this, leaning in as though we're having a conversation. But on camera, it's actually better to, you know, try and sit up straight, relax your shoulders, but, you know, keep your posture like that. It looks more
This
professional.
graphic I found is like, it's more for like an interview, like a job interview, I think, but it all applies. So.
Yes, it does. Yep. Hand gestures tend to work really well. Not everybody is a very descriptive person with their hands, but if they are, let them fly. No, don't go like that. I'm kidding. It's a joke.
You have to zoom out to cover them now, too.
Right. The other thing is body language. So some people are fidgeters. They'll go like this, you know, if they're nervous, or they'll tap their hands a little bit, or they'll go like this, play with it, or, you know, whatever it might be. Yeah. So if you can at least, again, this goes back to our whole line of questioning. The more relaxed they are with you, the less likely they are to be, you know, do their nervous tics. And that's just to your benefit in the end.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
So.
Okay, moving on.
Yeah.
The next tip is to smile with your eyes. Here's this is the best example I could find really of somebody smiling with their eyes versus not. You can kind of tell on the left that she does have a little bit of a smirk. You can sort of see that in her mouth, but she's not smiling as much with her eyes as she is with the picture on the right. So smiling with your eyes comes across much more not natural, but sincere. So versus just kind of having a fake smile, like, yep, okay, yeah. Like, it's very cheesy and awkward and not sincere at all, versus like having like, oh, yeah, like, okay, go. You know, smile with your eyes. It really comes across, you know, both kind of makes you seem like a nicer person, but it also, you know, looks a lot better on camera. So, and then use your natural voice. This is kind of what Dietrich was saying before. Talk to the camera or your interviewer as if they're an old friend, not you know, not a news anchor, or not you know, the person just solely interviewing you. If you do that, then you'll come across much more relaxed and friendly.
Right. Yeah. You don't want to go talk to the camera or your interviewer like they're an old friend. Like you don't want to get too gung ho with that.
Too anchory sounding yourself. Yeah.
Strangely enough, though, in the booth, if you're tracking voiceover work, it's actually better to be more expressive, overly expressive, because no one can see you anyway. So when you're doing your voiceover work, you can hear the different intonations in a person's voice, right? When they sound more excited about something versus, well, you know, don't do this. This is the track, talk to the camera on your interviewer, versus talk to the camera or your interviewer like they're an old friend, right? So you notice the change in your voice. That's a big thing with voiceover. Sorry, back to this.
And we actually go over that point again. I realize I kind of doubled the points, but.
All right. Don't rush it and choose your words wisely. You know, I'm really bad at that, so I don't know if I'd be the best person to get advice about that. Ben, I'm going to let you take that one.
I don't know if I would either. This kind of goes back to like relaxing, you know. If you're relaxed, you're going to kind of, you know, you don't want to overthink what you're going to say, but, you know, you also don't want to rush it. So kind of just take your time. If you need to pause for a second and kind of think about what you want to say next, that's fine. Just, you know, make sure you pace yourself. And then also with that, try not to use big words. I know some people, I have a friend of mine he's a really close friend of mine, but he's way more intelligent than I am, and he uses big words all the time in just like general conversations with each other, and I'm just kind of like, I don't even know what you're talking about right now. And if you do that on a, an interview on camera, the audience isn't going to know what you're talking about. Probably 90% of the people out there are not going to know what you're talking about. So try to dumb it down a little bit, and just, have a natural conversation. So.
Well, I was going to say that, sorry. Jargon. If you're doing something with a specific industry, like if I was going to describe a VOSOT, not a lot of people know what a VOSOT is. It's voiceover sound on tape. If you're in news, you'd probably know what that is. Or like a VL, right? I won't use that jargon. I'll explain what it is, right? Have your subject do that. If you're doing something specific to engineering work or something like that, especially with kids, right? You have to think of I guess, examples that they would understand in their life, right? And I don't know, I'm going to throw it out there, but I saw something that the average reading level of people in our country is around 3rd or 4th grade. So if a 3rd or 4th grader can understand what you're saying, you're good. But if you're talking way over here and you're talking at a PhD level, well then maybe that's the audience you're targeting. But if you're trying to make your show for everybody, quote unquote, go to that kind of level of speaking, which is surprising, but I guess not so much. So
I'm going to try to kind of rush through the rest of these because I want to leave some time for Q&A. So we already talked about look at the camera as if it's a friend. You skip that. Drink water. Bring water with you, or ask your host to, if you can have a cup of water, because a lot of people get dry mouth. I have a little bit of dry mouth right now. That's why I've been drinking water this whole time. Because if you don't drink water, you're going to start choking up and even coughing. Coughing on camera, it's just horrible for the audio, and so we just want to avoid that as much as we can. And then, like we've been talking about throughout this whole thing, just relax. If you need to, before the interview, if you get there and you see the cameras and the lights and you get nervous, go for a quick walk. If it's a live news interview, you might not have the time, but try to get there a little early or something. But do whatever you got to do. Go for a little walk, listen to some music, rest your eyes, whatever you got to do to kind of just get in the zone and get calm and relaxed. And then kind of along with that, don't forget to breathe. If you're just talking nonstop and you're not breathing throughout it, then you're going to hear it, because then eventually you're going to have to stop and you're going to be like trying to catch your breath, and you're out of breath, and it's going to be obvious that you're not very relaxed and not sound very good. So, and then just remember to just be yourself. You're asked there to do an interview for a reason. Your host or the producer or whoever is interested in what you have to say. So whatever you're there to talk about, just be yourself and just say what you got to say. So, yeah. Anything else?
Yeah, no, that was. Yeah, I think that's about it off the top of my noggin. Any questions or any thoughts that you've had or situations you've run into where you're thinking, I may have a question or two about that? Sure.
This is more technical, but which do you see as more important in doing a video interview? Is it the video or is it the audio?
Oh.
Here's a good question. That's the big question. You can obviously have audio without video. That's, there's radio for that. But you can't have video without audio. If you do an interview and the audio is just horrible, you might as well just throw a music track over it and just, do some B-roll and just like dub the whole thing. Audio is definitely very important. I would argue that it's more important than video.
Oh.
Yeah.
Preach.
Yeah.
Preach, brother.
Yes,
audio.
As an example, I don't know if anyone remembers the 2012 Super Bowl, I think it was. Whoever produced it that year, the audio was horrendous. I don't know what happened, but like the levels were all over the place. Even the halftime show just sounded horrible. Like it was not mixed well at all, and I was cringing watching that. Like I don't really watch football anyway. I don't usually watch the Super Bowl, but I happened to be watching that year, and I was just like, oh my gosh, this is horrible. So yeah, audio is very, very important.
Yeah, I was going to say, a simple example of this, and we do this in some of the SWTV workshops, is we'll watch a clip, right, and then we'll watch it without sound. sound is probably more important than anything because if you shut your eyes and you listen to, especially in horror movies, I don't know if any of you are fans of horror movies, but the sound is what makes everything scary. Not the shooting necessarily, it's the sound.
They
right?
build up with that creepy
right.
music.
And then, right? Why are you scared? It's the sound playing with you. So to me at least, sound is by far more valuable than anything because you can always cover up sound with B-roll, right? But you can't cover, well, yeah, you can't do anything about audio if it's trash. So.
Well, and my experience too is if you can double record audio, the better.
Oh,
With different mics
Oh, yeah,
and that.
absolutely.
Yes.
Because invariably a mic will run out of battery power in the middle of something that you didn't know, and you need your backup to cover some of that stuff.
Yeah. Watch the news sometimes. Occasionally the anchors, or even when they have guests on, you'll notice that they have two mics, two lavalier mics on. You'll see one right above the other, and that's in case one cuts out. So.
And just to comment on being an interviewer, after the interview, always thank your guest, even if it didn't go well. Be really nice to them. Keep it, because it's an unnatural situation for most people to be on a TV set. And you want them to leave the studio feeling really good about themselves, even if they messed up a little bit. And what we do on our show from time to time, since we're not really news, I will I'll have our host re-ask a question if the guest feels that they could have done it better. And I let them know beforehand that they have that option. If you think you can say it better, we'll give you a shot at it because we're not on live television. And our purpose is to make you and your message look extremely good as we can get it.
Very good point.
Since we don't rent the studio by the hour or pay our crew, we can do that.
Very good point. Thank you,
I was going
Jeff.
to say, Jeff, you make Jeff, you make a good point. And the reason you do a 3-camera shoot, for instance, is for those kind of goof ups too, is because while one camera's on the person who's doing the interview and one's on the interviewee, you can always cut back to the person asking the question, and then give that person you're interviewing a second chance, right? And then they can restart and just say, Ben, how was your day? And then instead of going, it's terrible, you go, oh, it was great, or something, whatever. Your question, I'm sorry.
I don't know if they were first with it, but Carol Levin, or back when they were WUSA, they'd have that barbecue. You'd go out there and you'd actually, they had 4 or 5 people from your organization invited out. They'd barbecue, you'd eat. I mean, they did so much to make you feel so comfortable. And I think it really probably showed in their interviews, especially with the less professional people they're interviewing.
Right. Yeah, one of the tips that, and maybe someday we'll get him to come on here, Boyd Hooper gave us when he had a workshop here, is there's always the handshake shot, he calls it, where you're going up and you're shaking that person's hand and just greeting them with a friendly smile, and what that shot does is it introduces that person to the audience, right? It's pretty close up, but it also shows them smiling and saying hi to you as the storyteller. So that's another tip that I've taken away, and I almost always get it. I just start rolling, and I'll go up and say, "Hey, I'm Dietrich. How's it going?" And they'll say, "Oh, hey, yeah, I'm so and so. What's going on here today?" And that's it. And then they'll tell you whatever you need to know. So for documentary style shooting especially, that's a really useful, example of how to do that. Anything else? Yes.
Any other questions?
More inside City Hall workings, but do you have written consent from your officers prior to shooting everything?
Oh, great question. Well, so with Edina at least, the whole department knows that we produce a show called Beyond the Badge, and they know that if I'm knocking, it's usually, "Hey, I'd like you to be on camera. Is that okay?" There are, and you'll find officers who are reluctant to do it, absolutely. Right. But as far as written permission, it's kind of assumed, that yes, you may be on camera at some point in your career, and especially these days. As far as a formal policy, I'd have to ask our city manager, Scott Neal.
Yeah.
But none exists as far as I know.
We've had some difficulties with our people like Blue because of Minnesota state statutes.
Oh, okay.
Saying that as a law officer and me as a city employee, I cannot take their picture. I cannot use it for websites. I cannot use it for anything. But me as a citizen, I could take all the pictures I want of Bloomington PD. But my individual municipality, since I work for them, I need to have written prior auth for everything.
Maybe it's dependent on the municipality too. I know that it's taken years, and I've worked at Edina part-time and now full-time almost 5 years. And in that time, it's taken me that long to gain trust and build relationships. And the more you do it and the more you give them a chance to do redos and make them look good, especially, the more they'll let their guard down and give you opportunities to do those inside stories. Like, I would never have been able to fly out to Washington, D.C. with those guys if it hadn't been for years of doing the show with them.
Sure.
Right? So I'd say that I would check with your city manager, but also just explain to them that you want to make them look good. Right? That you're, if that's your intention. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't want to assume.
My intention is to have access to them.
Yeah, I see.
I
Okay.
mean, in this day and age, they certainly want to portray a better image and gain that trust. And it's tough to do that when you're shooting just, below their head.
Right.
Or I can only have so many canine shots.
Right. Makes sense. Makes sense.
On written permission too, for even just like the general public, if you're concerned about it at all, if you're concerned of anybody coming back and saying, like, hey, I didn't give you permission to put me on your show or whatever, just write up something to always keep with you and have anybody who's going to be on camera sign it. It doesn't hurt to have it. Some of the shows here, we don't require it. As far as like the station goes, we don't require our producers to have their guests get signatures or anything like that, but some of the individual producers or hosts of the shows just do it just to cover themselves just in case. And even when you're out at like a public event, a lot of times, I mean, if it's in a public space at a public event, technically you have every right to be there and be recording it, but it doesn't hurt to throw up some banners here and there or whatever saying like this event is being recorded, just so people know.
Signs on stick saying, recording this for such and such.
Right.
And if you come into the studio, I'm surprised you don't have something out there that says a sign or that says you consent to do this. I mean, I had
those
to
are all
do
fair
this.
points.
Well, I had to do this for like crews when we do behind the scenes type of thing.
And I meant to put one up actually today, but I just forgot about it. To be honest, I really did. I meant to throw one up outside the door.
Yeah, well, that's it.
One thing I do occasionally when I'm on location, and I do a lot of documentary kind of shooting, is if I forgot to make form or release forms out, I have them just tell the camera, so I have it on video. And if they look like they're going to be a problem in the future, I save that. So, they'll say, I'm Joe Schmo, and I know this is a documentary on fishing crappies in Lake Calhoun, and that's that. So that will work too. It's not a legal thing, but it'll discourage them from making trouble for you if they want to.
What about licensing music for videos?
That's a whole
different animal.
We could spin
Do
off.
you guys like report your music uses and that type of thing, or?
Well, I mean, here we do have some music that we, bought the license for that's, available for people to use who come in and use the facility. A lot of companies that make that type of broadcast music, to be honest, it's really not the best music, but there's also
thank you.
There's also websites out there that you can go and purchase, a license for to use it individually. So, and then I know that like YouTube, if you have a YouTube account, there's an audio library in there, and as far as I know from what I've read, it's free to use for basically whatever you want. Some of the individual artists on there that put their music on there, they have a little disclaimer in there that says like, if you use my song, please always put my information in the, you know, in the details of the
Credits.
credits or whatever. Yeah, but a lot of them just say like, this is free to use.
I'm not allowed
So
to do that on YouTube anymore because people pay for ads.
Mhm.
Your video can go viral overnight.
oh yeah.
And the artist can say, you're making money off of my music.
Exactly.
So YouTube doesn't allow you to do
Really?
any of those stuff anymore. Yeah, like they implemented 3 or 4 months ago because
Mhm.
we buy all our music off of Audio Jungle.
Mm.
And they do decent. I mean, some of their music is a little bit, what's the word you call it? Loopy.
Mm.
But if you spend the time searching through, you can buy a decent track for like $19.
Mhm.
And you can use it then for broadcasting or whatever.
I was going to say one website we just found, and I signed up for it 2 weeks ago. It's called Artlist. Have any of you heard of this? I love this website. It's the music on there is more contemporary, and it's only $200 a year, and it's all you can use it for anything you want. So it's really cheap. Alternatively, we use free play music. That's what we've been using. It's also what ESPN uses, but they have way too much music, and the search engine's very difficult.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
like
I've looked through the fine details of that before too, and you do have
Yeah.
to kind of be careful with what you're using some of that
Right.
stuff for.
Yes.
You
Yep.
know, if you're using it like for profit, then a lot of those like some websites that say they're free, you know, you should look through the fine print first before you actually use it, because you can't always use it for anything you want. So
That's true. But yeah, it's like $2,500 for free play. So we signed up for Artlist and just. But yeah, what's the other one on there? Income Tech is generally like, that one's also a royalty-free site. Income Tech or whatever that is.
Well, at my old work, they had an account. I don't know how much it costs per year, but they had an account with Warner Bros.
Oh.
And it was a specific website through Warner Bros. That wasn't like pop music. It was music made for production, and it was. I know it was a paid site. You had to have, you know, a login and everything for it, but they had a decent selection on there. So
When I did my series here, I wanted some specific music that Ben Sidran wrote. So I just wrote him an email, said what I wanted, and he sent one back saying, fine. So
yep.
give it a shot.
That's yeah.
Yeah.
I've done that before. I've done that before too with some of my own videos. There was like folk band out of like California that I just came across one day online, and I liked their music, and it fit perfectly with a video that I was doing, and I sent them an email. And they're like, "Oh, go for it!" You know, especially a lot of like smaller bands that aren't on any like real big labels yet. Especially if they're just completely independent, they usually don't care. But obviously, you know, email them and get that written permission from them to use it
Actually,
first.
in the city council room, I made sure that I only shot the audience's back of heads, and it was me and the speaker, the guest speaker. Would anyone have a complaint like, that's the back of my head and you didn't get my permission? It never happened, but
No,
If
I've.
they're not recognizable.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I've never
even
had
if they
someone complain
recognize
about
it,
that.
that doesn't matter.
No.
You have to shoot at least half the face where their mother could recognize them.
Right. Not
Yep.
just the back of their dome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think legally they could ever do anything if you only saw just the back of their head. I don't think they
Right.
could
That's
like
advice
see her.
back then, I just-
Yeah.
Oh, these are all good questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Is there? Yeah.
Anything else? Any other questions about anything we went over tonight? Does anybody want to play around with the
Yeah.
Karma Grip or anything? Or?
Osmo or anything?
Do you have cards?
Yeah, business
Oh,
cards. Yeah.
Thank you. Sure, that's a good point. So the other thing too is if you have a business card, you can always give that to a person if they ask who you are and what you're doing, where you're from, because then they can get in touch with you to see how you have used that video. So that's what I more often than not do. If someone's like uber suspicious, what can you do? So.
Sometimes, too, along with your point about getting permission from the music people, I recently helped a friend of mine who was doing a documentary on a ministry for environmentalist camp for kids, and they were using a track from a songwriter who's famous that I'd never heard of, you know, a folk track, and I tracked down this person, got permission from him. and all he requested was a copy, digital copy of the thing, once it was complete, the documentary. And that's all he wanted. You know, he didn't care if it was being used. We weren't playing his actual master track. We were using a song that he wrote. The kids were using at the camp. So.
And we are extremely lucky to live in a very vibrant music community. I don't know if you know that, but there's a lot of music going on in the Twin Cities, a lot of local musicians. Just, you know, if you're looking for some music to use, some local music, you know, just go to like some bar or something that's, you know, this local musician's playing at some time or whatever, you know, just there's tons of ways to find local musicians here that are just, you know, independent, doing their own thing, and more likely than not, they'd be happy to let you use their music.
Be original.
Yep, yeah, and it's more original too, yeah. Yep. So.
Yeah. Well, cool.
Well, thanks for coming, everybody.
Thank you, guys. Hey.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Feel free to hang out for a little bit and mingle, talk to each other, grab some more food out there. I think there's a lot left, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Very cool. Thanks, guys.